When we picture the Italian Renaissance, we usually imagine a golden age of quiet awakening, a time when scholars read Plato in sunlit courtyards and artists sculpted perfect marble statues in absolute peace. You see this tranquility in the era's paintings. Look at the vast open plazas, the gentle golden light, and these perfectly spaced figures. Nobody is shouting, nobody is moving too fast. It creates an atmosphere of total, unbroken harmony. To manufacture this harmony, artists developed linear perspective. By drawing a geometric grid receding to a single vanishing point, they constructed a mathematically ordered space. That grid acted like an architectural cage, locking every figure and object into an exact, controlled position. The painter Piero della Francesca applied this same mathematical stillness directly to the people he painted. He depicted rulers like the Duke of Urbino entirely motionless, suspended forever against a vast, quiet horizon. Outside the studio walls, this stillness vanished. While artists plotted their vanishing points, Italian cities drowned in factional warfare and calculated murder. If you walked out of an artist's studio and into the actual streets of Perugia in central Italy, you wouldn't find enlightened philosophers. You would find heavily armed rival factions tearing the city apart. The city was dominated by the Baglioni family. They were ruthless warlords, locked in an endless, paranoid cycle of assassination and revenge, constantly battling other aristocrats for supremacy. This violence reached its climax during a family wedding in the middle of July 1500. Deep inward jealousy finally boiled over, and the Baglioni turned their weapons on each other. In the dead of night, two conspirators from within the family, Grifone and Carlo, led a band of assassins through the hallways of the Baglioni palaces, splintering the heavy doors to murder their sleeping relatives. The survivors fought back with terrifying ferocity. The young Astor Baglioni mounted his horse directly in the cathedral square, wearing gilded armor and fighting off the assassins like a living god of war before he was finally cut down. By morning, the corpses of the ruling family lay scattered across the stones. The slaughter was so intense that the cathedral itself had to be washed out with wine to cleanse the blood from the steps. And here is the paradox. The exact same warlords who slaughtered each other in those torchlit hallways were the primary financiers of the mathematically serene art we revere today. Why would a society dominated by ruthless killers and traumatized citizens spend fortunes painting images of absolute, unbroken peace? When life is cheap and unpredictable, a perfectly ordered drawing functions as a mathematical anchor. The grid allowed the artist to construct a world where every line and shadow behaved exactly as it was told, creating a stability that the political landscape completely lacked. A few artists chose a different path. The painter Luca Signorelli moved past this geometric silence to confront the era's underlying horror directly. Working on the chapel walls in nearby Orvieto, Signorelli channeled the sheer terror of Renaissance Italy into human anatomy, painting the end of the world through an overwhelming mass of twisting, struggling bodies. Signorelli trades the safety of the geometric grid for the raw power of the human body and pain. Here, the ambient terror of the streets finally becomes visible through contorted and terrified human muscle. Renaissance artists were ultimately split between these two responses. They were either crafting the piece they couldn't achieve, or they were translating the horrors they survived every day. That horror reached a breaking point back in Perugia. Within days of the massacre, the surviving Baglioni forces violently retook the city, and Grifone, the betrayer who started it all, was left mortally wounded in the street. As he lay dying, a striking moment of humanity emerged from the slaughter. His mother, Atalanta Baglioni, rushed past the armed men and across the bloody square to reach her son. She didn't call for more violence. Instead, she begged her dying son to forgive his killer, breaking the cycle of vendetta right there on the stones with a mother's blessing. To immortalize this deeply personal tragedy, Atalanta eventually commissioned a young, ambitious artist who had witnessed the shadows of this violence firsthand, Raphael. Raphael took Atalanta's raw maternal sorrow and elevated it. In his masterpiece, The Deposition, he transformed the pain of a grieving Perugian mother into the eternal divine grief of the Virgin Mary mourning Christ. Raphael utilized the story of the Christ to give the Baglioni's specific, local tragedy a universal significance. The painting became a vessel for a civilization trying to forge spiritual meaning out of senseless murder,